teach you guys are kind of the lessons learned that I learned over the past 14 years of how to convert more business. A lot of you guys may get business all the time coming to you, but sometimes it's very hard to convert. So basically what I wanted to start off is, how anybody in the room actually closes over 25% of the business that comes to them? Show of hands. That one. Over 50%? 2? 75? No one? Alright, cool. Well, I'm going to show you how I closed 80% of the business that came to us. One of the other things too, I want to find out, how long do you guys spend on your typical proposals for Drupal and winning website business? Over a week? A couple days? 4 hours? 2 hours? An hour? Half hour? 15 minutes?
All of those.
All of them, right? Okay. Well, actually, I've never spent over 15 minutes on a proposal. And I close business like LegalZoom, Hitachi, AT&T, in literally 80%, 15 minutes. So I'm going to show you the tips and techniques that I went over. Can you guys hear me? I don't know.
No, it'd be good if you had a mic. I don't think the
What
mic.
about now? Oh, there you go, sir.
Much better.
Okay. All right, this is going to be awkward for the next couple of minutes. Actually, my stuff is their connection to this projector is duct taped, and this is literally holding it. So it's kind of jacked up. So whatever, I'll kind of go like this. It's going to look real weird for the video, a little bit odd, but a little bit about me. I graduated from Florida State, so go Knowles. We win today. And Noel back there, great. So right out of school, I worked for Arthur Anderson, the paper shredding company, and really didn't like it too much right out. And so I really saw a need to jump into the web world. And so I started an agency back in '99. And it was just me for a while, maybe for a year, got a couple of clients, started building it up and started really hiring more people. And eventually got more clients, needed more people, hired a bunch. Literally, we grew to 2011, we grew to 30 people, and then in 2012, when we were involved for the second time, we were over 100. And sold the company a couple years ago, and now I'm just doing consulting and helping digital agencies out. So one of the little cool tidbits, and one of my friends bet me I could use the flame effect on Keynote, but this is me actually running away from my race car, and what I wish I could tell you is I would run in my underwear after that saying, help me, but that was just me fleeing from the scene before it actually blew up. So. But one of the things that helped me, this is so awkward right now, but one of the things that helped me convert so much business was how I basically set up. And basically what I would do with all the clients, I would say, if we're sitting here 12 months from now about this project, what would you treat as a success? And so what I'm doing is kind of backwards selling. So I'm finding out what the client actually expects, and I'm working myself back. And so the next thing what you want to do is figure out where they're at now. And so then there's going to be a gap of challenges, a gap of questions that you can ask them. And so then what I would actually start doing is asking them, what's the biggest challenge in getting you to the desired result, your end goal? And literally, they would just start saying, well, I need more traffic to my website. I need a higher conversion rate. I need multiple channels in order to convert more and get more. So basically, I'm figuring out all their pains. So now I can know what to address with them. Some of the questions I would also ask is, how are you getting customers now? What's your current sales process look like? And you have to come up with these based on the business that you guys are going after. But what you're really wanting to do is say, why do you want, this CMS system, Drupal, in order to sort of manage your website and then start from there? One of the things that I was really, really good at, and if I show hands, when you guys asked a client about their budget, how many of you could actually give the budget? what was it, how many could get their budget every time you talk to a client? Almost every time I got it. And one of the techniques that I used, I asked, well, so I know what I can offer you for, so I know what I can offer you. What is the budget? They go, I don't have a budget. Okay, well, great, you don't have a budget, so you can spend $1 million. Go, oh, no. Okay, 100,000, 50,000, 40,000, I'd start playing with it. And so that would actually start reducing it down, and then they would eventually tell me the budget. And by doing this, you never leave money on the table. And you don't lose a project because you're too low. One of the funny stories I always like to tell people, I went into a company office, maybe right at the very beginning, maybe around 2001, and this office was extravagant. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Man, this office is great. This is a really cool office. And I started talking to the person, they found us off the website, and started talking to him, and he said, well, what will it cost to design a website and implement a CMS? And basically I said, $2,000. And I come back, the guy basically laughed me out of his office. And I come back and I told my guys when I get back, and they said, well, who'd you meet with? I said, some company called like Berkshire Hathaway. It was Berkshire Hathaway, which is one of the biggest companies in the world. And if I kind of set it up better, knowing kind of a budget expectations that they expected, I could have said probably 100,000, probably got the deal. And probably were very, very happy in 2001 getting that deal. So make sure you always ask a budget and use that technique in order to figure out the budget so you don't lose business. It also comes down to proposal. I'm not going to talk to you guys about the movie, but whenever I look at a proposal, the order of the proposal is almost like a phone number. You can have all the digits, but if you don't have the order right, you're not going to reach your desired end result. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 8 steps that I would go through in the proposal that I would actually build. And what I would do over time is you start to build this really, and for the people that just joined, I'm bending over so this microphone doesn't come up. I'm not a hunchback, so. What I would do is build this extravagant proposal that basically I could customize in under 15 minutes for anybody. And actually, if you email me or if you go to my website, you can actually get the proposal that I actually used as well. So the website address, I'll give that to you by the end of the session. The first thing I'd always start off with is the cover letter. And a lot of you guys do that, but some of you guys don't pay that much attention. So think about your clients. They probably get 8 to 20 proposals for the projects that you guys are pitching them. And they're shifting through the pile. So treat your cover letter almost like your landing page. You have to get them to dig deeper, and they want to learn more. So a couple of things that I would do is kind of explain to them I understand their pain. I would explain to them kind of what we do or why we exist. I would talk to them about asking feedback. And by doing this too, over the years, you'll get feedback from a couple. And they'll say, I really like the proposal on this, or I would suggest this. And they'll actually tell you what they actually prefer, so you can adjust it to help out. And then lastly, I would tell them, I look forward to partnering with you. It's just a psychology thing. It makes them think that they're already working with you, and it worked for us. Tell them that you look forward to partnering with them. Sorry, I'll get closer. Oh, that makes a big difference. Next is the cover page. And really what you want to do here is, show the logos of the strategic partnerships. So one of the logos that we would always show is we were a Microsoft shop, don't hold that against us, but we would show kind of the Microsoft Gold partner. And so that would just give us a level up on some of the competition pitching. We would also kind of tell them a little bit more about the organization, the agency, and then I would just make it look nice as well, so it draws them in. Most people actually do not do this step, or they don't concentrate too much on the executive summary, where basically what you're doing is you're setting up
a little bit more detail than the cover letter about what you guys are about to focus on, what you're challenging, what your challenges that you're going to fix for them. So what I would do is when I was actually meeting with the client, I would determine all those challenges, kind of like I said, start with the selling backwards, get all their challenges and start writing them down. This is the area where I would just repeat it. And I'd put that down and tell them kind of, we've met with our team, we've researched this challenge before, and we've actually solved it for a lot of other customers. So then you're actually building confidence. And then you also want to define a timeline as well. And at the end of this, I'll actually show you, I'll go through a full-length proposal so you guys can see it and work. The other thing I would also focus on is kind of the critical areas to success. Basically what this is doing is this is actually setting up and informing the client that you've done this before, that you want this to be successful, and these are the things that we need to do. So basically, you remember when you start with the 12-month results, you're focusing on that, saying, Mr. Client, we agree on these results, and this is what we're going to actually go for. I would also go through how do we want to position you. So if it is a website with the CMS, this is how we will want people to perceive you. And then we would also let them know it's going to be scalable. So whatever you do today should work a couple years, maybe a couple months, I guess now, right? And then usability. We want to make sure that it's usable. And you can input all of your critical areas to success on here as well. On the services, most people in the proposals, they'll just get into the services and they'll just list them out. What we would do, and what would make us different, is rather than just selling the technology and listing out, we would actually categorize it. So we would categorize it in 3 sections. We'd categorize it into creative, marketing, and technology. And so we would talk about the website. We would talk about the deliverables that we would do. We would talk about the timelines, the things that were included. And then we would talk about how are we going to market the site, how are we going to drive traffic, how are we going to convert. And then we would get into the technology and go through kind of the scope requirements, the functional specs, and all of that. And we would include that in 3 different sections, just so it's very easy for the customer to read. And when I get to show you kind of the proposal that we would use, we would go through the process. So we had a 4-step process, kind of, and probably a lot of like what you guys had. Discovery, design, development, deploy. And so we would explain each section in detail. And what we'd want to do is we wanted to alleviate all the questions that people would normally ask in a proposal phase. We wanted to make sure we answered every question they could think of. And so over time, you're building this proposal and you're constantly morphing this proposal based on the questions you're asked and making sure that the proposal is very informative. I would always add imagery in there. So think about kind of the presentations like Steve Jobs. If you could describe something in a picture and just make it a little easier read than just having a heavy text document, it's better. I would also list out all the deliverables. Like, so for example, if I was doing a website, I would make sure I would list out it's a 10-page website. It's going to have 2 forms. It's going to have this many elements. I would make sure I get very descriptive. This will actually help you later on, especially if the clients come back for scope creep or additional requests. I would also list out additional services. So let's say the client had a special need and they didn't want to care about marketing their site, or they didn't care about this Drupal plugin that you would recommend to them. This is where I would put it. And I would say, hey, I would put a little title on it, additional services. This is where, this is some of the stuff that we would recommend. And about 50% of the time, we would actually sell them that business. I would also list out the services that are not included. So if you're selling a site that is bilingual and they only wanted English first, I would make sure I would list Spanish versions not included. Or back in the day before they had responsive, we would say mobile sites not included or Flash, and that was a while ago. Kind of dates me. On step number 6, so most people in doing a proposal, they'll just list out their services and they'll put a price on each section. I would not put a price on each section. Basically, I would sum it up in a project summary, kind of almost like a general ledger. Because you want it very easy for the customer or your client to actually total everything up. So I would basically do this, and I would have all the services built out, and so when I'm actually, if this was just a website and a CMS, I would literally just delete all the other lines, and so I can customize it very, very quickly. And I would also break it up, if you can kind of see, I broke it up into one-time charges on the top and then reoccurring on the bottom. You don't want the customer to think. Sure. So we were a full-service digital agency. So the top item is web design, print design, and a logo design. So those were the creative features that we would list. And so depending on the services, we would take some of those out. And then below that would be technology. So we would do e-commerce store, SSL, application scope, and then as you're looking down, and I'll show you an actual one that you can actually read versus this screenshot. I thought the projector would be a lot bigger. All right. And then I start talking about the team. So I tell them about the experience. One of the critical items that a lot of people leave off is telling them the team and describing the team that's actually working on the project. That would win us a lot of business as well. I would tell them about the awards. I would tell them kind of other similar projects that we've done so they know that we can actually do it. And then the last step is really focusing on the contract and the signature. A lot of bigger agencies, they do an MSA agreement, master service level agreement, where they separate the proposal and the agreement. I would actually never do that. I would actually keep it all in one, because I wanted them, as soon as they actually went through those steps that I wanted them to be able to sign it right away and to understand what to do. So let me show you, let's see, actual proposal. My computer crashed right before this, so give me a second. I'll show you Hitachi. All right. No, it's my duct tape, and hold on, let me see. Let me fix it. I touched the thing. The proposals are supposed to be blue. Oh, let me make it bigger. All right. So this is our cover letter. Just like I was telling you, I start off kind of solving their problem, telling a little about us. Kind of, we look forward to partnering with them and then asking them for feedback. Nice cover letter, little space shuttle. We had a space theme going on. Little partner logo. The project brief was our executive summary. And as I would change, basically what we would do is these right here, I would have like client. And so I would do a find and replace anywhere on that. And literally it would replace about 30 areas where I have the client name, so it made it personal. So that was one tip. Then I would go through the critical factors to success. Then I would actually start going through the services like I showed you guys. And so the first one was creative services web design. So then I would actually look through the methodology. I would tell them the goals, the position, the engage. I'd go through the other phases just so they understood everything of the process about designing and development. I would list out all the deliverables. So I'd tell them what browsers that was compatible, the different technologies, the number of pages. Here's where I would actually list out the additional services for a later phase. I would list out the timeline so they would understand based on the deliverables. In the technology, I know some of you guys do heavy development, and you're probably saying, well, how do you write up the whole scope document within 15 minutes? And what we would do is We would basically charge a scope document service to do that full detail. So we would charge about $2,500 to do that. So we would literally say, this is the project discovery, this is how we're actually going to go through it. And so we never had to do that within the first round of proposals. Then we'd actually go through the, the detailed functionality that they wanted. So Hitachi wanted a locator guide. Then we would actually go through the content management system. I won't show you the one that we used, and show you the different features. I'd go through the hosting and show the rates that they would do if you guys did hosting. Sure. Yep.
How would you describe it? Because like when you went over the overview, you had a lot of detail about what they need and how, there was a lot of detail involved in it. So how do you skip over the discovery process without?
You're talking about for like the detailed technology scopes or for the creative?
Just even understanding what they need, you kind of have to go through a little bit of a discovery. So how do you?
So you do that in the very beginning before you even get to the proposal stage. So that's kind of the questions, and you're getting all the detail. And then what I would do is I would transfer a lot of those notes into the proposal, so then it would save us time doing the proposal.
Okay. How do you separate that from the discovery process? I guess what do you charge the $2,500 for versus?
So when I'm talking about, the question is how do you separate the discovery process on the development from the proposal? So the key is on the development, the custom development. So we would basically set out a full day session, and we would explain to them what that actually looked like, and saying, look, we can't go through in a couple hours what this detailed application needs to look like. We need a full workshop day in order to do that, and to give you basically kind of the floor plan and the architecture where you could use us if you want us, or you could go out to another shop and shop it as well. And so we would position it that way, so we would get out of the discovery in the very beginning. That answer your question? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then hopefully you guys can kind of see the project summary. And this is kind of a reduced one where we would actually start clearing stuff out. Sure.
Like the project you're talking about, is it largely fixed fee or kind of materials, mixture?
Yeah. This actual proposal was just a project. So it wasn't much retainer work or any of that. Our projects were probably 50-50. One of the great sessions you guys should go to later, I think it's in the afternoon, is on value-based pricing. One of the things I learned after this was to sell on value versus price. And Gene Hammett's a good friend of mine. He actually used to work with me, so you guys should go to a session. I think it's like at 1 o'clock. And you'll learn a lot of value from that. But like you'll see here, we sold on a lot of on price. But we won. I mean, we won 80% of the time. So we were doing something right, but looking back, we could have done even better. Maybe we could get 90%.
I can add something to that because I work with Jason, and I was surprised when he told me we won 80% of the projects with this proposal. But he did. I mean, literally, it worked. I think one of the things that, I don't know if you've gone into detail about this, is the process that you took to get them through that. I think they bought the process more than they bought the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking to the clients, they're buying you. I mean, they're buying your experience, your passion for solving their problem. And so that's why I'd always start out with, where do you want to be? What's your biggest challenge? And it's amazing what you can uncover when you ask those two questions. And it can take you down a whole, new kind of direction, new road, versus kind of someone saying, I need a content management system. Well, great, I could do this, and this. And you never let the client talk. And you're selling yourself, you're selling your team. And then when they get the proposal, it's just an added benefit. And you just have to show them that you're going to provide them value, and they'll convert. And our competition never liked us for that, so that was always good. And so hopefully it helped you guys out as well.
Yeah.
proposal before you do the custom development scope discovery? How do you come to these numbers?
So this does not include we always would tell them whatever our general estimate, because we would get kind of the regular would be around 20 to 30%, give or take. And so we would, as you could kind of see when we got to the development, which is right in here, we would basically do a very general outline of kind of, how is the locator guide going to work? How is the product registration going to work when they actually buy a power tool? And so this could not be a scope document. There's so many details in the background from, edit and update and delete and all those, and all the reporting in the back. You just can give a general estimate. And so we would basically, over time, we would learn based on certain assumptions. I mean, we did so many different buyer locators or, product registrations over the years. We knew how long it would take, so we could give a general estimate. But then again, until you get into the finite details, you never know what's going to change. And so we would basically give them a general overview of what we think it would take. And then as soon as they would engage with us, we'd make sure it was plus or minus. And sometimes we would nail it right on the head, but we were always up front with them.
I got a question, just a general one. Is this like for smaller jobs, which I would say mine are probably typically smaller than what you're doing here? And my mindset was I've tried doing like bigger, thicker things, and sometimes I feel like it's too much. And so I've kind of gone the opposite way to where there's enough, I think, enough detail to clearly state the scope. But I felt customers kind of appreciated just a simple, 2, 3-page, 5-page, whatever. What's your thoughts on that? Because this is making me think the opposite.
Yeah, sure. So I came from the $500 website days, and literally when I was in the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, I had the proposal printed on one sheet. I had a bunch of check boxes and empty boxes where I could actually go, oh, you need 5 pages. I would write 5 pages. I would be like, $7,500 or $500 or whatever in there. And then I've also been through the phase where I would get them a 3-page proposal as well, but then they would have 1,000 other questions. And what I always found out with the smaller proposals, they add value. They just do. But you can't just put bullshit in there either. You have to put real kind of methodology and the purpose why you do it, right? So I actually liked kind of this process I saw a lot better, because with the smaller ones, they would always have 1,000 questions. And sometimes when you send them a proposal, you don't get that second chance for them to ask questions. They've already made up their mind with someone else. And think about how the clients make their choice. They'll never pick the cheapest, they'll never pick the most expensive, they'll pick the ones right in the middle that they feel the most comfortable with, and that laid out as much detail for them so they understand. Because what they're going to buy is they want to make sure that you're going to provide them as much information and they're going to understand it. Because think about that communication gap. Some of these people, this is their first or second website that they've ever done, so they don't understand the process. And so the more that you can educate them, the less communication gap you have later on. And they're going to think that same way. So when I was selling them, I would tell them kind of exactly what they're actually going to get on the proposal, and I would try to walk these guys through the proposal every time. And that was a whole kind of session. I'd be like, this is kind of what we're going to do. This is kind of the methodology. And you would get that more FaceTime with them.
So,
You're saying you would walk them through the proposal after you delivered it?
yes. Oh, yeah.
This was a key point. Never deliver the proposal without having set up the meeting to review it. Because how many people go dark once you give them the numbers? So either you're sitting with them face to face, you're doing it through some screen share, you can't do that. And then thirdly is, I'll send it to you 5 minutes before the meeting, but we have to go over it together. Because otherwise they just look at it, flip through it, and if they have questions, they...
Yeah, and make sure all the decision makers are there too. Don't be just presenting to a marketing manager that has no buying power. Because then you're just going to get her thought and be like, yeah, I'd like to go with you. But then the decision maker will look at it and your price may be a little higher because you put more detail in it, and then they'll go with someone else.
So I think that this makes a lot of sense for once we're here to kind of guide the proposal process pretty well. How do you adjust this when dealing with RFPs?
So RFPs, my thought on those, we would only do a couple of those. Most of the RFPs we would do were the RFPs that we wrote. A lot of the RFPs were just, I would keep this same format and submit it. I'd spend 15 minutes of my time. If I got it, I got it. But RFPs, they're basically already made up their mind, and I would not go after RFPs very much. And we were a big shop, so you know, and it also tells you kind of how that business actually operates. I mean, we never did government work, which were always RFPs. We did work with a lot of higher educational institutions like Morehouse and University of Georgia. They required RFPs, but we were the ones that wrote the RFPs. So, and a lot of times when you have a proposal template, you can actually morph it very quickly into their idea. And the more you have here, these are most of the questions that they ask anyway.
Did you find the menu approach led to a line item video?
I'm sorry?
Did you find that the menu pricing approach led to an opportunity for a line item video?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't mind that at all, because I knew as long as we could burrow our way in there, we could show them value, and then we could get more business. So I didn't want to just kind of do a smoke and mirror and say it's going to be 80,000. This is kind of the value you'll get, and then they're always wondering. I wanted them to be able to be like, yeah, I don't want to do this right now. So what this would allow me to do is if they did have an issue on price versus what we were going to deliver, I could say, no problem. We can take this out, and this out. And then we can look at that later once we build you up. Or I could go back to them and say, I recommend you taking this out, but if you take this out, it's going to affect your end result of what you want to go after. Just a section where we'd show awards. I'd actually go through the project deliverables. Then we would go through kind of the project roles, and we would define those. And we came up with cool names like strategic commander and mission controller. So we had some fun with those. But half the people might not even read this, but half the people did, and then that kind of validated them, making the decision to pull the trigger with us. Then we would actually go through and show the team members. And then we would actually go through the agreement. And this proposal was 21 pages, all in all, with the agreement. Long agreement. And then one of the other tips I want to give to you guys, it's kind of off topic, but I know you guys always have issues with clients paying you. And so one of the things that we always put in the proposal that helped us sometimes get paid 100% on the project before we were even 30% done was just changing the payment terms. And what we did is probably most of you guys would do 50% up front, 50% at the completion. But the clients are always dragging their feet. And so what we would put in the agreement is we would do 50% up front, halfway through the project, which for us, most of the time was accepting the creative would be a quarter or at a certain date. And that was key. And that would be based on the timeline. That's why the timeline's so important, because the client's agreeing on the timeline. And just like all of you, the client is never wrong and they're always on time, right? Never. And so what that would allow us to do is be like, okay, well, here's the next invoice on this date. And then we would do the same thing on the completion. So we would say when we're completed or at this date, which was agreed on the timeline, we would get paid. So that's how we would maintain a lot of cash flow. So we had that into the agreement. What other questions you guys have?
And I apologize if you covered this up as a distraction.
No problem.
Are you doing the rate calculation for the quotes now hourly, or have you used other systems like a weekly or service-based price?
Yep, it's a great question. we would know at all times our fully burden rate, and we would know the estimated time it would take for a project. And then based on the budget in the very beginning that I would get from them, I would know, can I make 20%? If I couldn't make 20% and it wasn't a key account I needed to get that was going to be a loss leader, then I could come up with a price for that. So my price always adjusted. So it took us literally, I could do a 15-page website with a CMS and a little custom development at cost for $8,000. Anything over that was gravy. So the same website I would charge $110,000, I could charge $20,000. But it was all based on the perceived value and what the client's expectations were. So that's why it goes back to asking the client the budget and then playing with them to figure out their budget, even when they say, I don't have a budget.
So I think the corollary to my question is, which set of numbers are you showing the client to get them to trust your budget number?
That goes, it depends on what they tell me in the very beginning, kind of on the entry. So if they say their budget's $100,000 for this project, I'm not going to come to them with a $12,000 proposal. They're going to devalue me. So one of the questions that I would always ask is, what's too much that the client wouldn't choose me, and what's too low that they would devalue? And then I would try to come within the middle. And it's just, you know, it's all about perceived value. So if you think about, you know, why do people buy a Bentley versus a Volkswagen? It's the same car maker, different perceived value when you show up in a Bentley, right? Versus a Volkswagen. Not dogging any Volkswagens. I know, Gene drives a Volkswagen.
Stop after this. Sure. I think I'm coming at this from a slightly different aspect, because I have a different problem. Okay, you have a budget of $100,000 based on comparable. I know that your project is about $180,000, but you don't want to compromise.
But you don't want what?
But the client doesn't want to compromise, and doesn't believe that I know what I'm talking about when I say, hey, by the way, that's a lane.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the consultative approach that you need to kind of turn the neck that controls the head. And you got to find kind of the pain points and really sell that and sell the results. I mean, another question probably Gina cover later on is, you know, what would the result cost you for not doing it? Or what would you be willing to pay for the result that I have? Yeah, I think someone had a question in the front. Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned that some of your clients are unexperienced.
All of them.
Would you prefer that kind of a client to somebody who's more experienced?
I mean, I'm joking around with some of them all inexperienced, obviously. Some of them that we did projects for, this was like their 100, you know, they've done a couple hundred projects. Give or take, I'd probably prefer someone in the middle because I don't want to know it all, right? So we did a lot of work in the very beginning where we were the sub for a bigger agency, which I would encourage you guys not to do because they think they're bigger and better and they have a better process, but you've developed a really good process over time that works for you and they'll never want to go for it. So for that example, I would never work with a bigger agency, even though it would be like, you know, we would work with DDBO and for like Reebok, and boy, that project went haywire. Just because they thought they would miss their timeline, they would expect our timeline. So, I mean, it depends. I would turn down, you have to be willing to walk away from certain businesses that you do not want, that will cause you pain later on. I mean, I've walked away from $500,000 projects before just because I knew it would kill our team in the long run. Yes, it was great for cash flow and celebration, but you still had to deliver the work, and then the work you're going to lose money in the end run.
I know you said you don't really, or you didn't really focus on RFPs too much, but I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about coming up with pricing for an RFP when you don't necessarily have the opportunity to really understand what the budget is in advance for the project?
You're talking about if you're drafting the RFP? If you're on, you know, that's kind of, if we didn't have an in, like someone in our circle of trust in the RFP, we would never do it. It was just the percentages that we would win were way too low. But if we had someone on the inside that could feed us information, then we would do it because we had a better chance of getting in, and we knew information that we probably shouldn't have. Yeah. So this is one of it was the beauty about what we did, but then looking back, it was only a single channel for business development that we had. All of our business came from the web. So we put out good content. We did really good with PPC and SEO. And then we had a really good conversion once people actually came, to us on the website. So we had a lot of good hooks to get them in there. Now we also developed later on a strategic partner channel through Sitefinity. So we became the best of the best for implementing that content management system, where we got LegalZoom, Hitachi, AT&T, for them to come to us. So we found a partner channel. So just like you guys are doing with Drupal, we did with Sitefinity. But we were the best. We did everything you could to customize it, and we made sure Sitefinity knew that, and then they were our biggest advocates and sent us the most business.
So I wanted to go back to the proposal that I saw there. It looked like what I would call a fixed price bid. And so I've been, again, kind of going a different angle on that, where I've been trying to develop a relationship where somebody trusts me, they think our rate is reasonable, and I can give them an estimate, but I've been in situations where I don't want to quibble over a scope, like if you add this or you add that, oh, that's $50 or $100, I want to have a good estimate. Tell them I've been basically proposing a range that I believe it's going to be this many hours between this and this, with an estimated price of this to this. And I like that because it reinforces that it's an hourly rate, and if you decide you want the kitchen sink, it's not a problem because you know kind of what we charge. So I just want to hear how you feel.
No, that's a great question. His question was based on I do a range or a fixed cost. The more detailed you are on the proposal, and you could kind of see that on the web design, if the client alleviates from that, then I would encourage to do a scope change. And you think about even in the credit card places like with Stripe and Braintree, they have this flat fee. People like to know what they're going to pay. They don't want to have to figure it out later on. They don't want to be, like you said, kind of nickeled and dime and be like very cautious about, am I going to go over because you gave me a range? I want to know it's going to be $20,000 or $80,000 or $10,000, $5,000, whatever it is. I want to make sure it's this price and that price alone. And then, a lot of times we would give the first kind of scope changes if they were very easy for free, but what we would do is do a zero scope change. And we'd make them sign it and send it back to us. And so what that would do is psychologically be like, oh, they're giving me more stuff. And then later on, when you do want to charge something, you can say, I have 4 free scope changes that we've charged you. And literally, when we started doing scope changes, we didn't start doing them until maybe year 6. And when we did that, we made an extra $100,000 that month or that year. And then it just built over time. But that's why your proposals need to get more detailed. So, and if you guys go to the website, Jason Swank, I give that to you guys for free. Just look at convert more proposals and you'll see that. And you can download the Word document and use it to however you guys want. So I think we're running out of time, so I'll take one more question if you guys have it.
Other than adjusting your terms, is there any other ways that you help push along the buyer along the process, like promotions or anything like that?
Yeah, so the question is how do you kind of push the buyer along to make them quicker? What I'd also tell them is I would set expectations on our end for them of when we need information. We'd also not start the project until we got everything from them. So if we were waiting on them for copy, we didn't start until we get every single page. And they approved our our scope document and everything that we had. So we had all the tools at our disposal to rock and roll. And then I'd also tell them if they missed any deliverables, that could push them back in the timeline, where then they would go back in a queue and we'd have to reset their timeline. So it started pushing them along further.
But as far as the buying process though, is there any way like promotions or anything like that that would help, you know?
And never discount your prices. You know, one of the things that I would do sometimes is, look, you know, we're a boutique agency. We only take on a select few clients. You're evaluating us, I'm evaluating you. I think we can work together, but we only have room for 2 more clients, and I'm about to close one other one. And that was always true. We would only take on a select amount of business to, you know, crank out until we had more resources and stuff like that. So it just gives them a sense of urgency. I would never say, close with me today and I'll give you 10% off. Then they're like, you know, I'd rather more of a consultant approach. That was just my take on it. I've discounted it before and I've lost. Yeah. Well, cool, guys. Well, I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, I'll be up here. Thanks.